artifact may, give some excitement to their film and put a purpose to it so they can make a good story around it.
Right. Well, I think it's interesting that a lot of the films that the two of those put out can be quite prophetic in a certain way, as far as the way that things come true after their people see them. But is it so? But so let me put it to you this way: in the film, it was portrayed like there was the gathering of the skulls or whatever. Imparted some sort of secret knowledge or unlocked the secret knowledge. Do you find that that's necessarily true, or is that more of a thing of if I'm around a crystal skull itself, it has its own knowledge to import, and so I don't need to have these things together. Now, you've handled or researched with some pretty famous from skulls. Crystal skulls, and did you find that one was more powerful than the other, or are they just different in that way?
Well, to answer your first question, there is a legend told by several indigenous cultures of either one set or multiple set of 13 crystal skulls coming together, which is what they did in the film. Mm-hmm. They had this one main skull, which then when it finally went to the right cave, it united with 12 more, so there were 13.
Right.
So they were borrowing this legend. Now, my understanding of the legend is, and this is just my interpretation, is everybody asked, are one of the original 13 crystal skulls, or all of them, are they known? Are they out already? And my answer is no. And my answer of no comes from two sources. One is what I call soul memory, which would be having had past lifetimes, which I know for a fact I have, with crystal skulls. It just doesn't feel right to me. It's like it's not the right time. Humanity's not ready to deal with these original 13, which probably are so powerful that if a person isn't prepared, literally could disintegrate in front of it. That's how powerful I think those are.
Wow.
And the second part of it comes from the crystal skulls that I've worked with. We haven't really discussed very much, but what happens is when a crystal skull, this is the way I would phrase it, finds its proper home with its proper guardian, and the guardian has an interest to work with it and take care of it and honor and respect it. They have the ability to start to activate the crystal skull. And what happens for most people, and this isn't just for my wife Katrina and I, this is for many people who write to us and contact us, or we meet when we do our public talks, the crystal skull seems to have a living consciousness that works through it. Mm-hmm. Now, I remember one TV show I did. It was a British production company, but it was called The Truth About the Crystal Skulls, I think was the name of the show. And the Smithsonian Institute somehow was connected with this program as well. And I was the only pro-crystal skull person they interviewed. And I think the reason for that is because when the Indiana Jones film came out, all of a sudden I had more interviews than I ever had in a short period of time in my entire life. And most of the interviews I did, the person was polite and proper. But the group that I interviewed for, who asked me some really good questions for this one interview, they already knew that they were going to try to create the documentary to show the crystal skulls was a lot of baloney and fantasy and fake. And, so I was trying to explain to them, but I knew that I didn't have enough time to do this. What is this living consciousness? Like they tried to test on their show after I made this comment, where they took a crystal skull that had been made in China by a master carver there, and they applied electricity to it, and they tried to see if there was with the human brain, if you apply an electrical current, you'll get some kind of response, if you would get a response from this. And what they didn't seem to understand about this consciousness is it doesn't function and operate within our physical reality. It's more of like etheric or spiritual or astral, or it's in a different vibration. And the communication that people are having with their skulls is either telepathic, or it's on a feeling level, or it's through dreams, or whatever is their spiritual gift. So this is part of what I believe is connected with these skulls, and it links into, again, this idea with the 13 skulls. I think, and hopefully we'll be talking about this, there's this blue skull that I was looking for in Peru, which I've written an entire book about it, and I'm actually re-editing it now and updating it. And I've added another section about a special place in Peru, because anytime I write a book and something new is going on, I always want to throw it in there so I can share it with other people. And this blue skull in Peru kind of reminds me, again, of a higher elevated skull that I don't think is on the planet. Now, come back. What was the other questions you were asking me after the legend of the 13 skulls?
Well, yeah, I think basically the question is that, with some of the skulls that you've had or researched with, did you feel like that was in itself as powerful, or do you think that was one of those things where the idea of having them together was really all that important? One of the things that's interesting is that when you were talking about 13, a lot of people think 13 is an unlucky number. Is that something that you've experienced as well, that people think 13 is an unlucky number? Because, to be honest with you, in many cultures, 13 is actually a very big power number.
Right. I think it's 1 plus 12.
Right.
So in the case of the skulls, it would be a skull in the center of a circle of 12 around it. This would be the same for the Hebrews, the priests surrounded by the 12 tribes of Israel. Christianity, the Christ surrounded by the 12 apostles.
Right.
And even in our solar system, there has been a discussion. Now it's getting really crazy because they say there are planets beyond the Oort cloud, like Nibiru, and now they're thinking there's another planet behind it that has a very large orbit, that possibly in our solar system, the sun is surrounded by 12 planets.
Right.
Now, I'm not sure how they rank Pluto, because they keep changing between a planet and a planetoid.
Right.
Because Pluto's not that big. But there could possibly be 12 planets in our solar system. And George Hunt Williamson, who was an early UFO contactee in the 1950s, he claimed there was one planet in front of Mercury, which we cannot see because of the light of the sun, and two beyond Pluto. So that would actually give us the 12. But so really it's not 13, it's the 1 plus 12.
Okay.
That's what makes the 13.
Right.
And this seems to come up a lot. Now, as far as one skull versus another or working in a group, well, of course, each skull by itself has its own unique frequencies and energy. And what I try to explain to people is that size doesn't really matter. I mean, there could be a crystal skull you see that's the size of a marble that could have a very powerful effect on you, whereas you could have one that's human size and you might feel absolutely nothing with it. So it's not so much that one skull is more powerful than another. Each one has its own unique frequencies and energy. And there may be certain crystal skulls which you might meet, you may not resonate with at all, and other ones that when you're in their presence, you're like filled with happiness and joy. As far as them working together, in the case of the personal skulls we have, which is about 30, what happens is whenever a new skull comes into our so-called circle, at first it's not totally adapted to the energy of the other ones, but then when we have them all next together, eventually they all synchronize and are in perfect harmony. So there is, ideas and discussion about bringing a certain set of crystal skulls together, which could be quite powerful.
Right.
So that's why I agree with the possibility, whether it's 13 or 26 or 24, whatever the number is, that there are certain groups of skulls that exist which are very powerful. In the case of the so-called original 13, there's some thought given that maybe in the Earth's past, like when Atlantis was destroyed or Lemuria, or the Earth went through a polar shift, that the 13 skulls went in different directions. But one of the prophecies is that when these original 13 come back together, then world peace will happen on our planet.
Right.
So the indigenous people have some, prophecies that are connected with these skulls.
Right. And so can you talk about some of the well, I want to talk about Peru a little bit with you too, because I know that you were on the search for the blue skull, but now
right.
you were telling me off air before the show that you had were using the Mitchell Hedges skull, and are you still in possession of that, or is that something that where you were borrowing, or somebody had lend it to you?
No, this is brief history on the Mitchell Hedges skull and who the current guardian is of it.
Okay.
He's a friend of mine, and that's how I was able to make an arrangement with him to come to the Seattle area, the Washington area in 2016. The Mitchell Hedges crystal skull is named after a famous explorer, F.A. Mitchell Hedges, who was very well known in the 1920s and 30s. He was a true explorer. He was fearless, and if something caught his fancy, he would do an expedition.
Right.
So at the end of 1923, he went to British Honduras, which is now Belize. He received permission from the British government to excavate the ancient ruins. He was looking for evidence of lost Atlantis. And around the end of 1923, his adopted daughter, Anna Mitchell Hedges, accompanies him, and they found a buried Mayan city. It was totally covered by vegetation. So the local Mayan natives helped them to burn the vegetation, and they were able to see the city. And quickly the story's told that his adopted daughter, Anna Mitchell Hedges, on her 17th birthday, January 1st, 1924, climbs to the top of a tall pyramid. And this city shows a lot of damage, so they think there may have been an earthquake that hit it in the past. And as she's coming down from the top of the pyramid, she sees a crack in the pyramid reflecting sunlight, and she just gets this feeling it's something important or magical. And so she convinces her father to go back. They get the local natives to help lift the heavy stones. She's a really skinny young lady. At 17, they lower her in, and she brings out in her sweater the top part of a crystal skull, meaning the cranium. And then about 6 weeks later in the temple area, they find the lower jaw. So this is how the Mitchell Hedges skull is found. And then at the end of their expedition, 1927 or 28, I forget which, I think it was 27, the head Mayan shaman gifts them the crystal skull in gratitude for the food, medical supplies, and clothing, and in kind of being like their extended family while they're there. And so Mitchell Hedges' family has the skull. And then when her father dies, it goes to her. I think in 54, he passes away. And then she kept it until she passes away in 2007. So she lived to be 100 years old. She had a really good friend named Bill Holman who helped her at the end of her life and worked with her and helped her to share the crystal skull. So he inherited this crystal skull upon her passing. So periodically, Mr. Holman feels inspired that he needs to go out and share the crystal skull with other people. And believe me, many people have heard about this crystal skull because it's like, if you think about one, this is the first one that comes to mind.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's almost an exact duplicate of a human bone skull. And also it has a really powerful energy around it. It's life-changing. It's changed me for sure.
Right.
And so I just made an arrangement with him. And in basically, I think it was April, May timeframe, he came in 2016 to Seattle, and we traveled to a bunch of different places and had about 150 people, I would say, that came to our events in order to either hear him talk, see the crystal skull, and some people actually had a private session with it.
Right.
So that's where it came. So it doesn't belong to me. It's just the most powerful one I've ever seen. It's the one I feel the greatest affinity for. It's the one I think that's changed me in the most powerful way. And to some degree, I feel, whenever I think about it, that I have some connection with it. Plus, I think I've worked with it in the past as well.
Right.
Because